I'm going to talk about one of the world famous Indian epic, Ramayana, and its Muslim adaptations. In this paper, the influence of the Rama story among the Muslims is highlighted and discussed. I hope to show how Muslims are integrated and deeply involved in the transmission and protection of Indian culture and religious ideology. During the last millennium, the Islam that had reached India engaged in a significant cultural give and take with Hinduism. It was the Bhakti movement and Sufism that gave impetus to this phenomenon. In many parts of India, even in the present time, there exist so many interpretations of the Ramayana among us, the Muslims. Over the course of centuries, there have been numerous such cultural transactions between Hindu and Islamic societies in India. This can be seen in the arts, oral traditions, language hybrids, food habits, and even in the dress styles. The Muslim Ramayanas are typical product of such centuries-old Hindu-Muslim transactions. Mappala Ramayana. The Muslims who live in Malabar region of Kerala are called Mappilas. Malabar was a region where both Hindus and Muslims coexisted in harmony. The Mappala Ramayana is therefore a narrative of the Ramayana that was molded against the backdrop of Hindu-Muslim cultural transactions. The Mappala Ramayana is in the form of the Mappala songs that circulated among the Muslims of Kerala in both oral and textual forms. In the past, Mappala songs were written in Arabic Malayalam, which used the Arabic script in writing Malayalam words. According to K.K. Abdul Karim, a researcher of Arabic Malayalam, over 6,000 poetic texts and 1,200 prose texts have been composed in Arabic Malayalam. There are two distinct strands of the Ramayana narrative, which the genre of Mappala songs. One is the form of oral literature, whereas the other is the textual form. The Ramayana in the oral form is called the Mappala Ramayana, whereas the textual variant is known as the Ishal Ramayana. It was C.H. Kunniraman Nambiyar, a folklorist who collected and compiled the Mappala folk songs that were in circulation as the Mappala Ramayana. Kunniraman Nambiyar collected the Mappala Ramayana from a folk singer named Hassan Kutti at the 1917. Kunniraman Nambiyar started in an interview that during his childhood, he had come across many Hindus who used to sing this Mappala Muslim version of the Ramayana. This shows that the Muslim adaptation of the Ramayana was a matter of intercommunal exchange, where Hindus embraced the Muslim version as a legitimate Ramayana of their own. There are in total 143 lines in the Mappala Ramayana. That happens in the Mappala Ramayana in the transplantation of the Rama story into the context of the Muslim community in Malabar. The Mappala Ramayana can be divided into 4 songs. In the first song, a concise version of the Rama story is narrated. The behavior features of the characters in the Mappala Ramayana are depicted as that of the Mappala Muslims. In their beliefs and customs, they have close affinity with the Mappalas. For example, the marriage proceedings of Dasharatha, Rama's father, in the Mappala Ramayana becomes the nikah, the Arabic term for the marriage contract according to Islamic customs. The dialect of the local Mappala Muslim in Malabar issued in the Mappala Ramayana. Thus, instead of the word Maranam in Malayalam, the Arabic term mouth is used to refer to death. Similarly, typical Mapala kinship terminology used in forms of addressing and referring to characters in the Mapala Ramayana, further highlighting its Mapala lifestyle context. For example, Dasharatha is referred to as Rama's Bapa. The Malayali Muslims call their father Bapa. Similarly, Ravana's sister, the Demoness Shurpanaga, is called Pengalumma, a Mapala term for sister. In this manner, by using Mapala words to denote kinship term, the Mapalaization of the Ramayana is reinforced, not only in words and customs, but also in their visual imagery. The characters of the Ramayana undergo the process of Mapalaization. The Demoness Shurpanaga and Sita, wife of Rama, were introduced in Mapala Ramayana, wearing the traditional attire of Mapala Muslim woman. Rama has beard like Muslim man. Ravana has also beard. Interestingly, in the Mapala Ramayana mentions Ravana has shaving of the 10 beards of his 10 heads. In a sense, the characters of the Mapala Ramayana are all like the Mapala Muslims of Malabar. Even the eating habits, the characters in the Mapala Ramayana show a close affinity with the Mapala Muslim culture. Two food items mentioned in the Mapala Ramayana are the chicken biryani and the pattal. From the language spoken to the eating habits, the Mapala Ramayana is replete with the cultural and lifestyle indicators of the Mapalas. The Ishal Ramayana is a poem composed by Poem Karuvarakundu, a Muslim poet from Kerala who penned around 2000 songs. The meaning of the word Ishal is tune. Ishal is also the generic term used for the meters typical of Mapala songs. Mapala songs are characterized by their melody and rhythm. Many different types of tunes, Ishals, are used in the Mapala songs. In the Ishal Ramayana, almost all of the prominent tunes, Ishals, have been made use of. Moreover, numerous Arabic verses are also used in the Ishal Ramayana. Many of the songs in Ishal Ramayana are arranged in such a way that they can be sang for opera also. Opera is an art form that is prevalent among the Muslims of Kerala. Opera is usually performed as a part of the wedding functions. The opera is usually accompanied by Mapala songs, and the Mapala songs sang during the opera are called opera songs. For instance, in the Ishal Ramayana, the song that depicts the Sita Swayamvaram episode, the Rama is selected to marry Sita is set in the Ishal called Oppana Chayal and can be sung to accompany the opera dance. Similar attempts, the Mapalaization of the Ramayana have been done in Kerala earlier too. For example, the Navina Ramayana composed in 1922 by Karuman Kurikal, an Islamic scholar. In many parts of India, Muslim poets and scholars engaged with the Ramayana in various ways. Two such Muslim scholars are the Tamil Umar Pulavar of the 17th century and M.M. Ismail of the 20th century, who were influenced by the famous 12th century Tamil poem, the Kamba Ramayana. Umar was poet, a Sufi, and an Islamic scholar who had also written a biography of the Prophet Muhammad. There have been Numerous studies on how the Kamba Ramayana had greatly influenced Umar Pulavar's structure and depiction of the Arabian terrain in his history of the Prophet titled Sira Purana. In such a manner, from ancient times, Indian Muslims have tried in multiple ways to assimilate and interpret and exemplify the Ramayana. The Ramayana literary tradition has spread throughout other South and Southeast Asian nations, including Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, China, Vietnam, Japan, Siam, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. The Ramayana story is not seen as an Indian legend, but is rather perceived as a story that took place within their own countries. Ramayana stories that were adapted in Buddhist regions like Thailand and Burma have Buddhist themes. And in Islamic nations, they show the influence of Islam. In Central Asia, for example, the Ramayana is told in both Khotan and Tibet. Khotan is a place that belongs to the eastern region of former Turkestan, a prominently Muslim country. The Khotan Ramayana is a Ramayana version that is similar to the stories of Tibetan Ramayana. The Rama story was prevalent in Indonesia even from ancient times, even though there are many similarities between the Indonesian Ramayana and the Indian Ramayana. The majoritarian population of the region, the Muslims, are also depicted in their Ramayana story. Therefore, the Indonesian Ramayana is strikingly different from other Ramayana versions. Just as Valmiki, the legendary author of the Sanskrit Ramayana, is regarded as the first Sanskrit poet, Adi Kavi, the author of the Indonesian Ramayana too is known as the first Sufi saint by the term Adi Wali. Wali is the Arabic term for a Sufi saint, and Adi is the Sanskrit term for first. The name of the Indonesian Adi Wali, the Sunan Kalijaga, an Islamic preacher. Sunan Kalijaga was the first Wali among the 9 Walis, 9 Sufis, who propagated Islam throughout Indonesia. And so the term Adi Wali, the first Wali, also conveys his role as the first among the teachers of Islam in Indonesia. He is also attributed with the composition of the Indonesian version of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and their adaptation into the popular Indonesian shadow play form. Sunan Kalijaga is also considered to be the first puppeteer. Interestingly, there are similarities between the biographies of Valmiki and Kalijaga. According to the legend, before becoming a sage, Valmiki used to be a hunter and also engaged in robbery and murder. One day in the deep jungle, he tried to rob 2 sages, but he was unable to withstand the force of their personalities, and the sages advised him and converted him. He became a practitioner of tapas and a great sage. There are numerous stories in the Javanese folklore about the early life of Kalijaga, the author of the Javanese Ramayana. He used to be a gambler and a robber. As compared to Valmiki, he was skilled in robbery and plundering even an entire population. One day, he robbed a saint named Sunan Bonang, who was a teacher of Islamic philosophy. Bonang taught the robber Kalijaga the principles of Islam, and thereby he was transformed. He immediately accepted Islam and began to follow Sufism along with Sunan Wana. It is believed that Islam was propagated in Indonesia by the converted Kalijaga. There are also later versions of the Ramayana in Indonesia. Hikayat Seri Rama, Hikayat Serath Kandam of Java, and the Ramakalinga have to be mentioned there. The Hikayat Seri Rama is a text that narrates the epics of beginning with the story of Ravana's birth and rise to power, and ending with the reunion of Rama and Sita after Sita's fair ordeal. Many Islamic concepts, including Allah and the prophets Adam and Muhammad, are incorporated into this text. The Hikayat Seri Rama has 7 parts. In the first part, the story of Ravana and his misdeeds for which he was exiled by his father are narrated. Ravana, who reaches the island of Sinhala or Lenga in the Indian versions, performs his rituals and obtains authority over the 4 words from Allah. It was at the instance of Prophet Adam and Prophet Muhammad that Allah grants his authority. The condition was that he should administer his rule with justice. Following this, Ravana marries a princess from each of the 4 worlds and becomes the father of many sons who later become kings. In the Seri Rama, the genealogy of Rama's ancestry starts with the Prophet Adam, the first human and the first prophet according to the Islamic belief. Islamic themes are also embedded in another noted modern drama story, the Serath Kandam. In Serath Kandam, to Prophet Adam, Prophet Muhammad, and Allah appear as characters. During the war between Rama and Ravana, Jibril, the angel Gabriel, acts as a messenger of the negotiations to avoid the war. As per Islamic belief, Jibril is the angel who brings messages from Allah to the prophets. Not only typical Islamic characters, but also the typical Islamic values and practices are structured into the various Indonesian Ramayanas. Such versions differ from the Valmiki Ramayana and the other Indian drama stories also in their incorporation of local geography and culture into the Ramayana story world. Indonesian Muslims clearly consider the Ramayana as a part of their own literary tradition and actively take part in staging the Ramayana while being aware of its Hindu origins. They view the Ramayana as a legend of their national tradition. Philippine Ramayana. The Ramayana traveled as far as the Philippines as well, most probably owing to Islamic adaptations of the Hindu epic. This is evident in the Maharadhya Lavana of the Marano tribal Muslims that the Filipino Indologist John R. Francisco discovered in 1968. In this text, Ravana is the prominent figure, but he is called Lavana. In this version, Lavana is the son of the Sultan of the Pulubandiyar lineage, and he has 8 heads instead of 10, unable to bear the nuisance brought about by the extreme short temper and aggressiveness of his son Lavana. The Sultan exiled him to an island nearby the Pulu city. Even after being banished to the island, Ravana continued to wreak havoc. He set the trees on fire. At this time, a green tree that had caught fire cried out that Ravana was about to conquer this world. Jibril, the angel, told this incident to the god Taihun. Taihan told Jibril that Ravana cannot be killed with anything except a sharp sword from Kulubandiyar Masir. After a long time, his father relented and Ravana returned to his own land. The version of Ramayana titled Hikayat Maharadya Ravana begins with the exile of Ravana. Ravana marks penance by placing his head on an altar of fire night and day. After 12 years, Allah delegates Adam to inquire Ravana's want. Ravana expresses his desire to have lordship over the four worlds, the heaven, hell, earth, and the sea. He also tells Adam that if he was granted this, he will not henceforth become angry at anything in the universe. The Maharadya Ravana is quite different from Valmiki Ramayana. Themes related to Islamic beliefs, including the Quran, Allah, Adam, and Jibril, and found in this text. Moreover, Arabic words such as Sultan, Shah, Imam, Haji, Khatibs are also mentioned. The Ramayana stories are proof that Indian culture had reached the Philippines before the Arab culture did. The reason for the Islamic influence exerted on the Maharadya Ravana could be that the Ramayana stories that reached the region of Mariano were the ones that spread from Malaya, Sumatra, and Java. Malaysia is another pre-prominent Muslim nation with a rich literary tradition of the Ramayana Mahabharata tales. They have deeply influenced the socio-cultural life of the people through both oral and textual forms. The Ramayana versions in Malaysia have two features: the lack of devotion towards Rama and the inherent influence of Islam. The Muslims of Malaysia take active part in the shadow puppet show play, the Wayang Kulit, and in other plays influenced by the Ramayana. However, the Muslims consider the Ramayana versions as just another branch of literary art. In an interview, Anwar Ibrahim, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, started, "I am a Muslim who prays 5 times a day. In our cultural fest feasts, your Ramayana and Mahabharata have roles. There are Muslims in most parts of Malaysia who regularly read them. Our Mahabharata and Ramayana may perhaps not be the same kind as those you see in India. I am given to think that they may have been Islamically rewritten in Malaysia." Manuscripts of the Ramayana before the arrival of Islam in Malaysia are available. With the spread of Islam in Malaysia and becoming the largest religion in the nation, many of the artifacts of the old religion, culture, and literature were sustained by Islamizing them. Some versions are much more Islamized. The Hikayat Sirirama is an example. In this text, the names of the characters and the events have been altered significantly. According to this version, King Dasharatha, Rama's father, is the great grandson of the prophet Adam. Hindu deities such as Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma have been reformed to conform to Islamic concept. One thing is obvious: the Ramayana is not uniform. The essence and beauty is the heterogeneity. It has to lesser or greater extent influenced the Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Muslim, Dalits, and Adivasi communities. The Rama story is a literary form that has deeply influenced not only the people of India, but also those of other Asian nations. It is deep rooted and heavily branched out. So the roots are Indian. Its branches have grown and spread throughout the nations of Asia and have also played a decisive role in molding their cultural sensibilities. Muslims played a significant role in transmitting and spreading the Ramayana all over Southeast Asia and adapted their own Ramayana versions in South Asia. Even though I did not relate to North Indian Ramayanas in this talk, there are prominent Mughal interpretations of the Ramayana in Persian and in Mughal paintings. For example, the Akbar Ramayana. In this way, Muslims contributed to enriching the Hindu tradition, participated the country's centuries-old cultural belief, and take along with Hindus. Thank you.